It is old news at this point that J.J. Abrams will be directing the new Star Wars movie, Star Wars Episode VII. There were many promising candidates. There was Brad Bird on the short list, Joss Whedon also on the short list, but Disney decided to go with J.J. Abrams. It's understandable. He managed to reboot Star Trek without pissing off too many people, and even I'm kind of excited for the new Into Darkness movie. It looks really, really good. And I think they figured that since the new Star Trek movie was basically just a Star Wars movie anyway, they might as well give him Star Wars while they're at it. However, the fanboy reaction was vocal and largely negative. Honestly, at this point, my feelings have been hurt enough by Star Wars that I'm kind of over it. The prequels were just so very disappointing, especially Episode 2. Episode 1, despite how much everybody hates it, is a charming children's movie. And Episode 3 does what it needs to do as far as setting up Episode 4, 5, and 6. But Episode 2 is like George Lucas directs Twilight. And that was the movie for me that broke the camel's back, and from that point on I was just like, okay, there's still a place in my heart for Star Wars, but I have grown up and moved on. So now that I've accepted the fact that J.J. Abrams is directing Star Wars, sort of distanced myself from my fanboy emotions, I have a couple predictions that I would like to give as to what everyone can expect to see in Star Wars Episode VII, because it is a J.J. Abrams film. Prediction number 1, lens flares. This is the first thing that everyone said when they heard that J.J. Abrams was directing Star Wars. A lens flare, for those of you not in the technical movie know, is basically when there's a light on the screen and it shines at the lens of the camera and it makes a little, like, light explosion. Anyone who knows anything about J.J. Abrams was just immediately like, it's gonna have a frickin' ton of lens flares. In Star Trek, this was a intentional stylistic choice to throw lens flares on the screen as much as possible because the future is so bright that it can't be contained, and they would purposely shine a bajillion lights on the camera in every shot so that they could get as many lens flares on there as possible. You see lens flares all the time in Fringe, and in Super 8, there's even a scene where a boy is in a dark cave with no source of light, and yet somehow there is a lens flare on the screen. Prediction number 2. It will begin with some kind of aircraft exploding. The beginning of Lost begins with a plane crashing on an island. Fringe begins with everyone on a plane dying. Super 8 begins with an alien spaceship crashing into a train. Star Trek begins with a spaceship coming out of a warp hole and then immediately gunning down another spaceship. Basically, J.J. Abrams seems to have some kind of vendetta against flying. Prediction number 3. Female protagonists. Now, I don't know if I'll go so far as to say that Star Wars Episode VII will have a female main character, but I do think Star Wars Episode VII is far more likely to pass the Bechdel tests than any of the previous 6 films. The Star Wars universe is kind of notoriously male-centered. If you look back at the movies, there are really only a handful of named female characters. You can count them on one hand pretty much. It's basically Leia, Padme, Aunt Beru, sure, there are tons of named female characters in the Star Wars universe, but how many times can you think of them being named or having lines or talking to each other? J.J. Abrams, whatever else you can say about him, is very good at writing compelling female characters. The main character of Fringe is a female. The main character of Alias is a female. There's a very strong female supporting character in Super 8. In Star Trek, Uhura took a much more vocal role than she did in the original series, which may have been because she was black and it was the 60s. But still, in some ways, she even replaced Bones as the holy trinity of the Star Trek Enterprise. I'm not gonna say that Star Wars Episode VII is going to be a feminist masterpiece, but I do think that Jaina Solo is going to take on a pretty significant role, probably more significant than her brothers Jason and Anakin, and maybe even more so than Luke's son Ben, if it even centers around those characters, which it might not. Prediction number 4, Han Solo will die. Now, it's an established fact in the Star Wars extended universe that Chewbacca dies sometime after Episode 6. Also, Han Solo has come out and said that he wanted to do a death scene. Harrison Ford has come out and said that he wanted to have a scene where Han Solo died in the original trilogy. So it is entirely possible, and I think even a little bit likely, that Han Solo will be dying in Star Wars Episode 7. Prediction number 5. It will be better than the prequels. Now this is a very controversial one, and a little piece of my fanboy self is like, no, you shouldn't make this prediction because it probably will be worse than the prequels and you'll be disappointed again. But I am an eternal optimist, and I believe that J.J. Abrams, if not able to bring the series back to its original glory, will at least be able to make a solid Star Wars film that fans will be able to go to and not entirely hate. And at the end of the day, we can at least be grateful that Disney did not choose Michael Bay.